All right, it is time to start printing. So I have my block that I have carved. If you'll remember from the last video, remember that there were several things that I was not quite sure about, where I didn't want to take out too much, so I decided to leave it as is, and I can always go back and carve it. So that's why we always do first a test print. So you're gonna do a test print on just a random sheet of paper. I've got like the back of a seating chart here. You can do it, you can tear a page out of your sketchbook, whatever, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. You will also need a piece of scrap paper to put underneath, so when you do your rolling here in a minute, if you accidentally roll off, you've got paper instead of the table underneath you. So you need 2 sheets of scrap paper for this one. Once you are ready to start doing your real prints, you will only need scrap paper under, and you will do your prints on an actual sheet of paper. But this is just a test print. So I've got my ink here. I'm gonna open it up. And it is not at all like paint. I think that's the biggest surprise for a lot of people. They think that the ink is gonna be similar consistency to paint, and it definitely is not. It is most similar to peanut butter. And you'll notice I'm using the back of my spoon to scoop. That is on purpose, because if I scoop it in this part, it's so sticky, it's never gonna get out. It's already literally all over me. I don't know how this happens. Okay, so that's probably enough ink to start. I can add more ink later, but it's difficult to take it away. So I'm gonna get my brayer and I'm going to start rolling like this. Then I'm gonna turn it and roll. If your ink sounds sticky, like gloppy, you probably got too much to start with. But I want to get it nice and smooth, because the smoother it is on here, the smoother it will be on here, which means the smoother it will go on. And you can even see there are some areas that are not getting ink on them. So I want to make sure that all of it gets ink on it if possible. Although, if I had to guess, I would say that somebody left this roller sitting like this and it got some flat spots on it. That's why you're supposed to leave them sitting like this, because it's got a nice little flat bar back here for you. If you leave them sitting like this, this will happen. And we can work around it. Okay, so I've got some ink loaded up on my roller, and now I am just gonna roll it on here, and the first roll is the most satisfying, because you go from having something that's like really like rough and scratchy to like actually being able to see what you've done. Okay, I'm actually gonna get a little bit more ink. You wanna work fairly quickly with this, because now that I've got my ink on my linoleum, it is starting to dry. And you don't want it to dry before you print it, obviously, because then nothing will happen. Okay, so here we go. You will see how I'm having trouble getting ink on this spot. That is because on the opposite side, if you'll remember, there was already a design on there, because I didn't want to waste a block. So when I'm pushing down on that, it's like caving in and it's not getting a lot of ink on it. You should not have that problem unless you are using a block that's been used on the back, like if you messed up. So already I'm noticing several things. This spot here needs to be slimmed down a lot. Like it looks like it's just a chunk of uncarved stuff instead of like a little line like it was supposed to. There's also some areas here who picked up a little bit of ink. They may be okay. This area needs to be addressed. I think I'm gonna like this amount of texture though. This, I definitely need to go a little bit further on. So to print it, this is my paper that I am printing on. I'm just folding it in half so you don't see my seating chart. And then I'm gonna put this on here. Never put your print on your paper, put your paper on your print, because you can go through and do this to the paper, which you would not be able to do to your block. So I'm just trying to make sure I get good ink transfer. And I peel it off. And I see what I've got. Okay, so a couple things here. this looks like my ink was a little bit too dry when I printed it. So that's a printing error. This is a carving error. This was supposed to be there, but not quite like that. This is a carving error. This is a carving error. So this right here especially is a carving error. So there are things that now I know I need to fix. So I would take this to the sink, wash it off, get my carving tool. Don't carve while there's ink on it. Wash the ink off. The ink is water soluble. It rinses off pretty easily. And then I would go back and carve out these areas using this test print as a guide. So I would say, okay, well, I know I need to carve out this area, which would be this area right here. And then I would go in and carve that. So you use this as a guide to know what needs to be carved. You go back and carve again. And then when you're ready, you come do another test print. When you get a test print that you are happy with, then you start printing on the actual paper that I will give you. But you don't do that until you get a test print that you are happy with. And that also gives you some time to work out things like the ink drying or having too much ink on, like you can kind of go back and forth. For your final project, you will turn in 10 prints. So you have to have 10, not 10 test prints. You can do an infinite number of test prints until you get to 10 prints, but you're gonna turn in 10 good prints to me. The point of printmaking is making consistent art over and over and over again. Like that is the point of coming up. Otherwise, why would you spend this much time carving a block just to print it once? It's meant to be printed over and over and over again. So you will print it 10 times, or maybe you need to print it 15 times in order to get 10 good ones to turn in. You're being graded on the 10 that you turn in. So if you need to print more than 10 times, that is totally fine. But you will turn in to me 10 prints that are on the smaller paper that I give you. And then you will also turn in a photo of your block as well. If you have any questions, let me know. But virtual students, you will have to come on site to do this part. So you should be able to ask me any questions in person. Also, when you're here in person, we can talk about using different colors because I do have different colors other than black. You will have to do several black prints, but then you can also do some colored prints as well. So anytime you have any questions, just let me know.